The mountains held their breath that evening. Sunlight poured itself thin over the ridges, spilling a copper glow that lingered too long as if reluctant to leave. Down the trail moved a young woman of 20 years, her moccasins thin, her shawl torn, her eyes a mixture of shame and defiance. Her name was Kimmy. The land knew her footsteps, yet tonight it felt foreign, hostile, empty. She carried no bundle, no horse, only the quiet despair of one cast away. She paused, hand pressed to her ribs. Hunger gnawed, but it was not the worst of it. What stung sharper was memory, of voices shouting falsehoods, of faces turned cold, of her own people branding her an outcast. She had spoken truth and was punished for it. Now the wilderness was her only witness. Just one night, she whispered to herself, her voice fragile against the silence. A thin plume of smoke rose between the pines ahead. It curled upward like a promise. She followed it with weary steps until the shape of a cabin emerged, crouched among the trees as though grown from them. She hesitated at the edge of the clearing. Men could be crueler than storms in this country. But her body trembled from cold and hunger. She raised her fist and knocked. The door opened with a groan. A man stood in the doorway, tall, near 30, shoulders broad from chopping wood, hair falling in dark, rough waves. His eyes were pale, thoughtful, a little sad. Josiah was his name, though she did not know it. The fire behind him lit one side of his face, leaving the other shadowed, as though the world had carved him half light, half night. "One night," she pleaded, voice cracking. "Can I stay?" His gaze traveled over her torn shawl, the dirt on her cheek, the hollow in her eyes. The silence stretched long, broken only by the fire's crackle. Finally he stepped back and opened the door wider. "One night," he said. She entered. The cabin smelled of pine smoke and stew. Warmth enveloped her, almost unbearable after so much cold. She hovered near the door, clutching her shawl, watching as he ladled broth into a wooden bowl. He set it on the table and moved away, not staring, not pressing. The gesture itself felt like mercy. She ate slowly, each spoonful softening something inside her. When her voice returned, it was halting. She told fragments, how her tribe had cast her out, how she had refused a forced union, how lies had branded her dishonorable. Words trembled, but once spoken they carried less weight. Josiah did not question, did not judge. He listened, eyes fixed on the fire, as though his silence itself was a balm. That night she slept near the hearth, warmth wrapping her like forgiveness. For the first time in weeks, no nightmare chased her. Morning came with a thin mist over the trees. Josiah was outside, splitting logs, breath rising in the chill. The steady swing of his axe, the thud of wood, the rhythm of labor, it was a language she could understand. She watched from the window, something easing in her chest. Yet danger lingered even in peace. Distant hoofbeats pricked her ears. 3 riders appeared between the pines, rough men with hard eyes. They did not approach, only watched, before vanishing again into the trees. Fear clawed her. But when Josiah came in, wiping his hands, he simply glanced toward the forest and said nothing. He set his axe down gently as if to say, "Whatever comes, I am ready." Days unfolded quietly. Kimmy mended his shirt by firelight, humming songs from her childhood. Josiah listened in stillness, reverence softening his features. Sometimes he set aside extra stew for her before she could ask. Sometimes she left a sprig of wild mint by his plate. The silence between them grew companioned, not empty. One evening, as shadows grew long, she asked, "Do you never tire of being alone?" He considered, gaze fixed on the flames. "I thought solitude was my friend. Then you knocked." Her heart trembled, but she said nothing. Some truths are too delicate to name too soon. The riders returned. 3 men in dusty coats, their horses stamping the earth, their eyes gleaming with ownership. "That woman," one sneered, "doesn't belong to you. Hand her over." Kimmy's breath caught. Shame burned her cheeks. But Josiah did not move from the doorway. His rifle rested nearby, but his hands stayed empty. His voice was calm, steady as stone. "She stays." The men spat curses, promised they'd be back. Dust rose as they rode off, leaving the air heavy with threat. Kimmy's eyes filled. "I should leave. I bring danger to your home." He turned to her, gaze unwavering. "You bring life." Winter pressed close. Snow veiled the mountains and nights grew sharp with frost. Kimmy gathered pine cones for the fire, her hands numb, her heart quietly learning the rhythm of this place. Josiah hunted deer, leaving offerings at the forest edge in respect. Sometimes they ate in silence, sometimes she told stories of her people's myths, how the stars were campfires of the ancestors. He listened as though the sky itself had bent closer. One night she found a small carving on the table. A bird, delicate, shaped from wood. Josiah said nothing of it, only looked away. But she held it close, a gift more eloquent than words. The riders came once more, this time at dawn. Their voices were louder, their anger sharper. But Kimmy did not hide. She stood at Josiah's side, shawl pulled tight, chin lifted. He stood with her, shoulders squared, both of them framed by the rising sun. The riders saw not a man and a burden, but a pair unyielding, rooted like the mountain itself. After a tense silence, the leader cursed and turned his horse. One by one they rode away, their defeat echoing louder than any gunshot. Kimmy's heart thundered. She looked at Josiah, and in his eyes she read something unspoken, something that had been waiting since the first night she knocked. That evening, firelight gilded their faces. Silence swelled between them until he leaned closer, voice a whisper almost lost in the crackle of flames. "One night," he murmured, "is not enough. Stay forever." Her breath shuddered. Tears welled, not of grief but release. She nodded, words unnecessary. In that moment the broken edges of her heart found their home. Weeks later, under tall pines they wed. No priest, no ring, no audience but the wind and the birds. Kimmy wore a simple white dress, hair braided with wildflowers. Josiah stood beside her in his best vest, freshly shaven, eyes steady with devotion. They clasped hands, spoke vows in the language of silence, and sealed their bond with a kiss as soft as dawn. The forest bore witness. The mountains kept their secret. In the years that followed, their cabin filled with laughter, with song, with the scent of stew and fresh-cut pine. Where once there had been exile and solitude, now there was belonging. The valley carried their story in its winds, whispering it to anyone who might listen. And if you lean close you may hear it too, the old truth, the quiet lesson. Love is not always fire or thunder. Sometimes it is the steady glow of a hearth in the Wild West, where one broken soul whispers, "Can I stay one night?" and another replies, "Stay forever."